and I am assured that I have all the entries that are going to be coming in. Bernie, apparently you might be getting some late arrivals later on, which will be meant mostly for you. And so we're going to honor the intimacy of whatever is going to be shared for that.
Thank you.
I thought it might be fun. Not everybody knows everybody here. My name is Jim Calandria. I am Rachel's husband, married into their family about 7 years ago, I believe it was, and we've been dating for 3, so that makes me 10 years in the making. So I know many of you don't know who I am. At that far table back there, I believe it's David and his wife. They are friends of Chris. Chris is their lifelong friends. And David's going to be sharing some memories personally once I go through the individual stories. The table in front of David, I don't know names, but I believe you're part of the Henleys, yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Henleys, so that would be Barbara's side prior to marriage.
Right.
Table in front is also Henleys, I believe? No.
Not all friends.
Friends. And I don't know all the names. Shiners.
Shine.
Foxes and Stevenson.
Shine, Foxes, and Stevenson.
Correct.
Fox. Okay. I'm going to leave it at friends of Barbara. Well, we're at this table. We all know Vern. Mike is next door, which is nephew of Barbara. Obviously Chris. And then we have friends of Rachel here as well that are very close and have been friends since college, I believe. Okay. So the reason why I go with the interpretations and introductions that way is I thought it would be neat after I read the story to try to figure out where or what table at least the story came from. So that's how we're going to go through this. Some are going to be easier than others just based off of the introductions I just shared. So the first one, and I did shuffle them. I am so very grateful for Barbara's loving generosity and hospitality toward my husband when he was a boy. Her acts of kindness have a ripple effect, and so her life is echoed in this person's hospitality and heart. I left his name out specifically. Anybody want to venture a guess? So we got to think about age.
Henley.
Vern, what are you saying? First table, that would be David. That is David that we're referring to, and that is his wife Ginger, I believe, who has wrote that memory. So thank you very much, Ginger. This one will be easy. Early on while dating her daughter, I drove to her house, her apartment, was knocking on her apartment door, and apparently the Harringtons did not know I was coming. I had not met them yet. So they did not know I was coming, and they did not know who I was. And I made apparently a disturbance. Apparently I made a disturbance during that dinner while they were having on their deck. And they sent a person to investigate who was knocking on that door. They did not send Chris, which to me would be the obvious choice. They did not send Bernie, because God forbid if there was danger. Who did they send? Barbara. Barbara comes walking around the corner and says, with a big smile, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, yes, I'm looking for Rachel. And again, this was early. Oh, so who is it, right? So that was my first memory of the family. And I remember when finally Rachel was still coming home from work, they brought me down, and I even made a comment that day. I'm like, I find it very peculiar out of the 3 people here, you sent Barbara to find out who's creating the disturbance. So kudos to Barbara for taking the initiative with a smile. Next, Mrs. Harrington was a huge part of my childhood as I visited 801 Prospect Street in Glen Rock, New Jersey. Summer sleepovers. Sorry, I can't read that word. Something else, laughter, family, mom, quote unquote, Band-Aids, ColecoVision, and Harrington Times in general.
David.
Yeah.
That was David.
Yeah.
David in the back, once again. Thank you, Dave, for being here. Moving forward, I would visit Rachel's parents in the Hamptons every year in quote. I loved doing puzzles with Barbara and Rachel, and she would always be 5 or so pieces ahead of me. She was great at it. Many, many, many times she would have to help me because I was bad. I was just bad at it. But she did so, helping me without not necessarily knowing it. Who would this come from?
Dina.
This was Dina up in front. Dina, thanks for coming today. Share a memory. It was winter and it snowed. I was with her and we went outside. I had boots on and I put one foot in the snow to see how deep it was. My foot got stuck in the snow. She was trying to help get my foot out and Dad was at work, so no one else was there. I soon did get out. Who am I?
Christina.
It's Christina. Yes, it is Christina. Thank you. This particular person decided that she wanted to name her memory, and she named it Fireflies. One of my favorite memories is when she took me outside. Basically, I live because I don't want to make sure that it was too easy to figure out who this person was. She took me outside on a warm summer night. We were about 6 or 9 years old. We were barefoot and wearing pajamas, and my mom was trying to explain about fireflies and how beautiful they were. We spent the evening summer around the yard, free, happy, laughing together, and catching and releasing fireflies. The joy of that moment, the joy and simplicity of that moment stayed with me for my entire life. It is a memory that I think of when times are hard. Free, happy, and laughing. Fireflies. That is Barbara's daughter, Rachel. Share a memory. Visiting Rachel in East Quogue and Barbara and Bernard settling in for 5 o'clock martinis every day, smiley face, heart, and exclamation points. I remember thinking how sweet it was that they made this special time to enjoy each other's company.
You.
No, I'm done. I was dating. Remember? Anybody? Thoughts? Who do you think that is? That is Jeanette up front. Yes, thank you, Jeanette. Thank you.
Spent a lot of time in the Hamptons.
Lots of times in the Hamptons. And here we are, so fitting, right?
Yeah.
Share a memory. One Christmas, we were standing in the living room, and Barbara was holding on to a support column in that living room while holding a glass of wine. I made a joke. About dancers and poles. And she proceeded to dance near this pole, like it was a pole. Who would be such a person to share such a memory?
Michael?
That would be her nephew, Mike Salietti. Yes, definitely. Was I there?
Yeah. I think
I
you
don't
were.
remember. It must have been, right? It's in,
You were there.
And the final one that we have here. Visiting the Harrington home in New Jersey at Christmas time and playing the infamous hobby game. Gallons of birdseed and lottery tickets were always a hit. Aunt Barbara's laugh was infectious. Where did this come from?
Henley?
Any ideas?
Henley.
The Hanleys, Karen Hanley in the back, yes. I want you to know that the hobby game not only continues, but it has infiltrated my side of the family, and my side of the family absolutely loves Christmas now, whereas before we always went through that depression like that's all I got. And now like we don't care what we get, it's all about the steal. And, so thank you for bringing that up, that is wonderful. And we got a last entry here. In pre-Bernie years, as there was such a thing, in pre-Bernie years, as a single male involved with the Hamptons bachelor rental, I had a date with Barbara. Obviously, she declined any further dating since Bernie took place as primo uno number one. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. It was lovely. And the idea here is that there are many, many, many more memories that Barbara has brought to us. And this being a celebration of life, I think it's fitting that Barbara would ask all of us to remember her as a model, and that we bring that to our family members and to our relationships, and that we enjoy each other while we are here on this earth, helping and supporting and celebrating each other. So thank you all for what you shared. David, come on up.
Thanks, Jim. That was really nice.
After David speaks, I'll also invite if there's anybody else who would like to just come on up and say a few words. No pressure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, I didn't know my memories were going to be read out loud. I think I might have heard something, but I didn't know it was actually going to happen. So there are more random thoughts on that card than usual. But thank you so much. I appreciate this, and thank you for the Harrington family for coordinating it, of course. Mrs. Harrington was a really large part, as I wrote in my little memory, a huge part of my childhood, and mostly because I've been friends with her son, Chris Harrington, probably from like first grade or something like that. It may be second or third grade, I'm not too sure. It might have even been kindergarten. We walked home a ton of times because we would stop off at his house before I would continue on to my house. And 801 Prospect Street in Glen Rock really became an iconic site for me. Actually, when I brought my wife around to Glen Rock, we'd drive by it because my mom still lives there in our childhood home. And I always be like, oh, that's the house that I hung out with my whole childhood. That's Chris Harrington's old house. And my wife would be like, yes, I know. You told me the last 25 times we drove by. You know? But I hung out there in the backyard, in the basement, and in the bedrooms so much. As a matter of fact, I hung out there probably, Chris and I were just reflecting, probably about 30 nights, 30 days, one summer, at least one summer, and that includes like, you know, sleepovers. So I almost like I almost like lived there. We made a joke, Mrs. Harrington and I would joke every time that I would actually go to my own house. Would be like, bye mom, I'm going to summer camp, and she would be like, okay son, we'll see you later, you know, and most likely I would go home, probably have dinner, and then be back in the evening for another sleepover. So it was a lot of fun. Now with I had tons of lunches at the house, I had tons of dinners at the house, and Chris and I just played and played and played. We did everything crazy there. We jumped bikes in the backyard. We played ColecoVision, we made audio tapes, and anyways, just amazing. So, but I saw Mrs. Harrington in a range of emotions, and she was really always smiling and happy to see me, greeting me at the back door. I didn't go to the front door anymore, I went straight in the back. Sometimes I don't think I even knocked. So, now, after a week of sleepovers, I did also see Mrs. Harrington happy to see me go home. You know, so she'd be like, "Okay, I'll see you later." But I also saw her very caring, and one particular instance that I remember is, for some inexplicable reason, Chris's bedroom, the floor turned to lava one day, and we said, we got to get off the floor. We got to jump up on the furniture. So we would travel around the room on the furniture, you know, jumping from furniture to furniture, make sure we don't get burned. And Rachel was there too. So like we were like surviving, like the floor's lava, we're okay. And then I made a misstep, and I fell off the dresser and landed my head on the TV. All right. So of course I don't think I made any noise at all, but I think Chris and Rachel were like, ah, Dave, what happened? And Mrs. Harrington came over, and she had this very caring look on her face. She said, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine, no worries. And then she goes, I think you're bleeding on the back of your head. And I went up here and pulled my hand down, and it was covered in blood. And then I saw Mrs. Harrington in another emotion of complete shock, you know, saying, what do I do now? I still have the scar somewhere in my head. So, you know, so that was quite an experience as a young person. I also saw Mrs. Harrington, you might be surprised to hear about this, and also Mr. Harrington too, I hope I don't embarrass him, as being a very irate, angry, frustrated, and pissed off when they would have to come down 1 or 2 or 3 times a night and tell Rachel, Chris, and I to go to bed at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, they would always say, go to bed, go to bed. So, Anyway, there's lots of other memories I have that's great with the Harrington family, and I really want to say thank you to Mrs. Harrington for sharing your food and for sharing your family, and later on, sharing your friendship. Really appreciate it, and you are dearly loved, and you are dearly missed. Thank you.
Okay.
Dave, thank you very much for that. Anybody else want to come up and share any experiences? I would love to hear these pre-Bernie stories. This table over here, I mean, you got me curious.
Oh no.
All right, come on up.
Stories I want to hear about.
Oh boy.
All right.
When Bernie and I go back all the years with Tom Fox and several living and dead members of the bachelor group, seemed like there was a preponderance of accountants. Accountants seemed to want to congregate. And so we had houses in Quogue, East Quogue, West Hampton, Southampton, the whole slew, Hampton Bays. I think it was 12 years. And we, as a group, fondly remember meeting up with Barbara Henley and Ginny Shine, Ginny Murphy, Murphy Shine, and we had great times. They seemed to be able to welcome the group of guys after midnight, looking for a quick breakfast. No kisses or anything like that. Now we're hungry, we've had a great evening, so we deem that the land of the clean sheets. Because there happened to be a number of nurses involved in those houses. So Barbara was always smiling. She just was a gem of a person. And of course, Chris and Rachel, we know them. Glen Rock. We live near Glen Rock. Glen Rock is where my youngest son lives now on Maple. So I go past the house. And I said, there's Bernie. Why he had to fill a pool, I could never imagine a person with a backyard pool that had to be filled in. That was just something. What happened to the pool? So the comment they made in the card was a solitary, individual, single date because Barbara was smarter. She didn't want to get involved with this nut, So it really worked out because Bernie was a stability Bernie. Between him and Pat, I wouldn't say Pat Nally is stable, but Bernie was in our houses, right, pretty well through, Bernie. But you were, stable. You didn't get involved in the crazies. Manhattan College, right? Manhattan College. Despite that, I'm for them. So we have great memories of those houses. And I think, Bernie, you were in the first house where we were in East Quogue on Walker Avenue. And the owner of the house was Granuza. Mr. Granuza came out of the house one day. We had a 10-bedroom house. Probably one bathroom, 10 bedrooms, one bathroom. Granuza said to us, all accountants, I can't take this rental business. Why don't you guys just buy it for $60,000? This is 1963. We thought it was an exorbitant price. East quote 65,000. And all the houses, I don't know if Barbara was in the house we had, that Tommy Fox remembers, where we had the Polish polka band.
Oh, the gatehouse.
No, the gatehouse, the one in West Hampton by the golf course.
Southampton.
And I hired a Polish band from Connecticut to come over to sound and play for us on a Sunday afternoon. After we had cleaned the house, the rental was over, the last day of the rental.
And the ceiling was so low in that dining room, the guy playing the bass couldn't stand the bass up straight.
Yeah,
It hit the ceiling.
Southampton.
and
That was Southampton.
that's Southampton.
Jimmy Going and I put together this party. We went and scrounged around generators from all over the town so that we could have lights on in the backyard. And when the party was over in the morning, you couldn't see the grass, you could see a beer can.
The band played on despite one of the exuberant guests who came from the beach. It got around the beach that there was a party in Southampton. Everybody's invited. This is the last weekend. He does a flying leap with the chandelier in the dining room. And there goes the deposit. And that was a reasonable comment every rental we had. There goes the deposit. So I think Barbara was at that party. Bernie, were you there?
Everybody was there.
Oh, everybody was. So I do have fond memories of Barbara, and thank Chris and Rachel for hosting this great day. So I was at the Henley gravestone this week and did some moss removal. And, you know, I don't do gravestone moss removal very often. So that's a fun. So Henry's got cleaned up. And Bernie, there's a stick in the ground. Is that because it hasn't taken place yet? Yeah. So that was very close to my wife's grandparents are a couple gravestones away. So good memories with Barbara. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. That was nice. Thanks so much.
Bob, I want to thank you for giving us the PG version of that story. I imagine there are many others like it. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and share an experience that they've had? Going once? Going twice? Last call. All right, at this point in time, I would like to call Bernard up. Come on up to say, final thoughts and well wishes. So, Bern, come on up.
First, I'd like to thank you all for coming here. Appreciate it. And so would Barbara. And Bob, the reason the breakfast sounded better as it went on during the night, Barbara said that wasn't always orange juice. That was very heavily gin, vodka, anything they had that could put you on the road again. But this is one piece of paper that I found in a prayer book that Barbara had with her when she was in the hospital. And it goes back to her education, which I think Ginny will probably remember the first grade when I think it was Sister Marion. Barbara came back from lunch late. Sister Marion was very upset at the thought that she should come back late. So she walked up to the front of the room and asked her to solve some math problems. And Barbara was frightened of school to begin with because her brother and sister had proceeded and told them, going to school is going to be the end of the world. So she was frightened, couldn't do the math objects. The teacher takes her hair and bangs it against the blackboard. That sets sort of the stage of Barbara and education for much of her life. But she didn't really give up on it. And throughout her life, she wanted to go to college. She was the last child of a girl, and in those days, the girls did not go to college, period. Which is why she was so proud when Rachel graduated, that at least someone in our family is continuing. But what I found in her prayer book was a grade report from Manhattan College. And the courses she took were composition literature, general psychology, and nature and experience of God. They all have A's. And she wrote in her own words, "Good girl, Barbara, love you."
So on behalf of the Harrington family, I want to thank all of you for making the trip down here to celebrate Barbara's memory and her life. And again, just to move forward and enjoying our own lives, understanding and recognizing the gifts that we do have and that we can share with each other. We have this space for, I believe, another hour or so. Yes? 2 hours or so. So please, continue to mingle, share stories, enjoy, and thank you once again for coming.
Thanks, Jim.